Okay guys, today we are going to talk about adding and subtracting whole numbers and decimals. So first of all, we're going to cover the adding and subtracting of whole numbers. It's pretty basic, nothing really new. Everything we talk about should be just a refresher of what you already know since you are in 5th grade. Remember that when we add the ones place value first. 4 plus 2 is 6. Tens place value, 3 plus 1 is 4. And the hundreds place value, 2 plus 1 is 3. Basic adding of whole numbers. When you subtract, our most important rule about subtraction is that the bigger number goes on top. So if we look at the subtraction problem, is the bigger number on top? Yes, 323 is the bigger number, so it is the number on top. So we just start with the ones place again. And we usually say, if there's a bigger bottom, we better borrow. And as you can tell from this problem, the 4 on the bottom is bigger. So bigger bottom, better borrow from the 2. Borrow from the 2, it becomes a 1. And the 3 becomes a 13. 13 minus 4 is 9. 1 minus 2, again it's a bigger bottom, so you better borrow. 3 becomes a 2. 1 becomes an 11. 11 minus 2 is 9. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So our difference is 199. When you add and subtract decimals, that's the part that'll be new to you in 5th grade. When we're adding and subtracting decimals, the most important thing is that we line up the decimals. So if you see from this problem, I have all the place values lined up. All the decimals are lined up, so I just add like normal. 8 plus 3 is 11. Drop my 1, carry my 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Plus 2 more is 6. Bring my decimal down exactly where it is. And then 1 plus 0 is 1. So my sum is 1 and 61/100ths. When you subtract, just like with a whole number, you have to make sure that the bigger number is on top. So 2 whole is bigger than 1 whole, so the bigger number is on top. And the first thing I do is 4 minus 7. That's a bigger bottom, so I better borrow. 3 becomes a 2. 4 becomes a 14. 14 minus 7 is 7. 2 minus 2 is 0. Bring down my decimal, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So my difference is 1 and 7/100ths. Now the tricky part comes in is when you have decimals that are different place values. For example, if I have 3 and 24/100ths, and I want to add 2 and 6/10ths. It doesn't look like the decimal is lined up correctly. But if we make sure that those decimal points right here and right here are lined up, then that's all that matters. It may look funny, but what we learned from our last lesson, that what you can do is fill in any empty spaces with what number? That's right, we can fill in any empty spaces with 0. So I just fill in a 0 right there, and now I'm good to go. 4 plus 0 is 4. 6 plus 2 is 8. Bring down my decimal. And 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 and 84/100ths is my sum. Now, when you are subtracting decimals that have different place values, the same thing. So if I take 2 and 6/100ths minus 1 and 3/10ths. Again, I can fill in any of my empty spaces with zeros, so that way I make sure that these decimal points are the number one thing lined up. And they are. So 6 minus 0 is 6. 0 minus 3, you can't take 3 away from nothing, so bigger bottom, better borrow. 10 minus 3 is 7, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Can't forget to bring my decimal point down. And my difference is 76/100ths. Now you can say 0 and 76/100ths, or you can just say 76/100ths. Now you noticed when I did like this problem, I said the difference was 199, but when I did an addition problem, I said the sum. Because if you remember from your vocabulary, sum is the answer to an addition problem, and difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So remember our most important rule when adding decimals, when adding or subtracting decimals, our number one rule is to line up the decimals. If you line up the decimals, you can do all your math correctly. And if there's empty spaces, we fill empty spaces with what number? Yes, we fill empty spaces with a 0.